All right, so this should be the last of this monster processor walkthrough videos. This one we're going to talk about the meta node that reads all of the monster data itself and writes it out to the individual monster files. So it's very similar to how we wrote the folder notes from a replacement standpoint. So if you recall, we had combined all of the data from all of the sheets into one master list, and that master list is going to get passed into the monster files processor. Now I'm also sending all the variables down to it as well. I'm not sure if that's strictly needed at this point. I know that in the original big massive output before converting all the meta nodes, I think it was required. With this consolidation, I'm not sure if it still is, but I'm going to leave it alone because it's working. Anyway, let's get in here. So it starts out with us bringing in the variables and the table data that we need. The variables are coming in here so that we can go and we can get our monster template. This is another line reader node, just like we used for the folder notes, only this is pointing to the monster template. And it is reading that in right here. And as shown before when we were actually looking at it in an editor, there's a lot of replaceable values in here. So this is where we're consuming that template. Excuse me. And then we're going to use another table iterator so that we go through every row of the table. And for every one of those rows, we need to set our parent variables. And so we're doing our target folder and our parent node name. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're just grabbing the path to the monsters and the path to the parent folder. And so, like in this case, we see monsters/z because this is already run and it's run for everything. So we're looking at the last record that it processed in this case. And then if we look at the parent folder, we're just checking to see whether or not this is a monster that is that has the same name as the parent folder. So like if there is a folder note entry for dragon in our workbook, for example, like if we come here and we look here, we will see there's an entry for dragon, right? And this is all of that general dragon information. So I want to write that into the folder note, right? So imagine when we did all of our folder notes, all we got was dragon.md, it had parent, and then it had a query, and that was it. Well, that I want to overwrite with this. So that's what this is going to do. This is going to say, okay, I want to get all of that general information, I want to put that in there. So we're setting up those variables to do that. And now we're gonna set our monster variables right here. It's another variable expression. We're setting the target file, and then we're setting our full name value. And this full name value is either going to be the addition prefix for like a general monster, like aerial servant, or I should say suffix. The monster suffix, the AD&D 1E MM1, right? It came from, it's for Dungeons & Dragons, first edition, and it came from the monster manual, right? So if it's a general monster, I do that. If it's a folder note, I take off all of that suffix information so that it matches the name of its folder, so it becomes a folder note. Because if I didn't do that, we would see in Obsidian, we would see a folder for dragon, that underneath it we would see dragon, parentheses, AD&D 1E MM. And that would not work as a folder note. So as you can see, now we have our Juju zombie right there. And then in the file, that's the file that we're going to write. So then we have to convert the file name into a path. So that's what's going to happen right here. We get our source path and we get our file. And then this whole massive block, every single one of these, let's see, is it every single one? The majority of them, all the way from here down to here, are all about doing string replacements. Every single one of them starts out with looking for a tilde wrapped value and replacing it with the appropriate column. So we look for this guy right here. In that row, we look for a particular value. We replace it with what's down in here. And so it builds up over time. So if we look at the results of this node before we go in there after our variables are set, if I look at the node monitor, oh, it's not going to tell me. I'm going to have to look at I'm going to have to look at the line reader over here, excuse me. We look at the line reader, because this is where the table is for this book here. Because what we're doing is we're replacing the line reader, or the template values, excuse me. So we're replacing each one of these in here, right? So as soon as we've done the source book, when we come in here, we will see that the source book now says Monster Manual 2. We go to source tag. Now that changed the source tag to say MM2. And game edition gets changed. So every single one of these operates on a very specific value. Okay. So we go all the way through every one of these. There are a few that have special cases, shall we say. So for example, what would be a good one to show? Treasure type, that's a good one. So if we come in on treasure type, just right here, he does a little bit more. Because treasure types, no, treasure types are not, that's not one of the ones. Let's go look at special attacks, that should be good. I found a few cases in special attacks where they are putting quoted strings in there. So I have to escape those quoted strings. And there's also, and so I'm having to put in a backslash to escape the quote. Well, to put a backslash in, I have to escape the backslash also. So I'm replacing the backslash with, or I'm escaping, oh boy, excuse me. I am replacing the quote with a backslashed quote, so it's escaped. So I do that in a few fields, but overall, we're just replacing a target value with what's coming in from the monster data, and we do that everywhere. I was having an issue at one point with the intelligence values, so I used this node, which seemed to be very useful. It's a breakpoint. So what it did was set a condition and said when that condition was true. It was for bandits, it was causing the problems. So I had enabled it, and I had said when the name was bandit, then break. And that was useful to find the problem. The only issue was I couldn't resume. Once I got past it, or once I found it, I went to go resume, and this sucker was always breaking. So it's not like a standard breakpoint where you can stop and then start stepping through things or get past it. So you have to disable this if you want to move on from there. So that's loads of fun. At any rate, every one of these does a string replacement. So we get to this point where we've done the last one, and we end up having all of our values in here. All replaced, all of the text, everything is in here. But you'll notice here, for example, I have ecology of the monster, and it's pointing to an empty file. So I don't have an ecology entry for this monster. And because this is just a juju zombie, it has no children, I have this data view block here, and that data view block is going to have 0 results. Well, I don't want that. So what I have to do, excuse me, is I go in and I have a rule-based row filter. This is an interesting node. This goes in and it does a bunch of tests to determine whether or not to let individual rows through to the final output. And so what I do there is I come in and I define a bunch of rules. 1 row per line, okay? The other thing that I do account for is if I don't have any other aliases. And I think I actually removed aliases up here as well somewhere. Actually, no, right here. So you'll notice that I have 3 empty alias array entries right there. Well, I don't want those either. So what I do in here in this row filter is I start out and I go look at every one of the aliases that I could be putting in there. And that's on rows 4 through 9. If those are empty by virtue of having just the empty hash mark there, then I say false. Don't display that row. So this only gets rid of the rows that I don't care about there. Likewise, if the ecology row has an empty file reference to it, then I'm going to get rid of that row. And so that cleans up those. And then finally, to get rid of the data view that I don't need, I check to see whether or not the name of the folder note is the same as the name of the monster. If that's the case, then I get rid of rows 97 through 116. And that ends up looking like this. We only have the aliases we care about. We've gotten rid of our ecology entry, which was, where's our description? Oh, it was right here. And then there's our stat block, and we've gotten rid of our data view. And so that's what gets rid of that. I'm noticing something I want to look at real quick. Yes, it's because I actually don't have the text for that yet. All right. So once we've cleaned all that up, it's all ready to be sent out into the wild. And so we're going to do a Java snippet to go see if the monster file exists out in our target location. This works pretty much exactly the same way as that folder note detection worked. It just uses different variables. So we go out, we look, we go get information on the file. If our override is true, then we're just going to blindly write the file. If not, we only overwrite the file if it's not there. And then we again have that top bottom if switch construct right here. We log whether or not we wrote it here and here, and then we use a CSV writer to write the file. And then this loop here ends our iterator that we started here. So whenever we hit this, we go to the next row in the file and we just keep going until it's all done. And that's pretty much it. Once it's done, it passes control back up to the main unit, which is here. And all that does is ends up writing, or writing "we're complete" into a message dialog and then displaying it to us. So it looks like this. And I have it tell us, what file we're working on through a variable. So it just spews the message right there. The only other thing is that I'm checking the row number and the iteration. So I guess we are using the iteration here, just so that we only display the message once, because if not, you would get that dialogue for every monster in the list, and that would be wrong. But that's the processor. That's the full walkthrough. I hope it was informative. I hope it kind of decodes some of the mystery of Knime, and how to use it. I use a less, I guess, involved process for doing spells and silent powers as well. There's not that kind of parent-child hierarchy involved in that for like subtypes and stuff, so I can just do straight A, B, C, D, E with that one, with those, and it works pretty well. Anyway, thank you for sticking it out. Questions, comments, let me know, and I hope you have a good day.